Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, I don't want to pollute today with partisan comments, because at the end of the day, victims will judge for themselves whether they see through any contortions or manufactured grievances. As parliamentarians, we have had our debates and we have had our disputes through Stage 1, Stage 2 and Stage 3, and I believe the bill is all the better for it. We've all had debates and amendments that we have won and lost at some point during this legislative process. But debate today is not about repeating or reheating or rehashing those old debates. Today is about putting our past battles behind us, because ultimately it's not about us. Presiding Officer, today is about the people gathered in the public gallery behind us, and about the many victims and survivors and victim support organisations, the length and breadth of this country. And I do want to, once again, Presiding Officer, thank everyone for their thoughtful consideration and engagement in the Victims' Witness and Justice Reform Bill, for their remarks this afternoon. And for the record, the bill was introduced with its current title. And can I also say to Jamie Green, I made a promise too the day that I introduced this bill that I would see it through and do everything that I could. And I do believe that this Parliament can be proud of the significant reforms that this bill will introduce that will support victims and witnesses in our justice system. And I would just like to remind Parliament of those. It will introduce a new champion for victims by establishing a Victims and Witness Commissioner that will have oversight of a Victims' Charter, powers to require criminal justice bodies to respond, and if they don't, they'll have a route to the Court of Session, a Victims Commissioner with purpose and power to hold to account the implementation of trauma-informed approaches that will see the re-traumatisation of victims, and supporting, not just now, and supporting victims and witnesses to give their best evidence, because that surely is in the interests of fairness. This bill will introduce radical improvements to how sexual offences are dealt with through the creation of a new sexual offences court, a court that will, in its establishment, compel change. And I just couldn't accept an alternative that only gave the power to courts and didn't see that through by compelling them to change. And of course, there's the abolition of not proven, a long debate that has ensured that the change will now happen, a change that's long overdue. And some of the evidence of the support to abolish not proven goes back decades, and indeed even to Michael McMahon's Members' Bill, which of course was unsuccessful at the time, but I think speaks to the value of Members' Bills irrespective of whether they complete their journey or not. And yes, there is reform in the Victim Notification Scheme to ensure victims can be supported, informed and ultimately empowered. And rape is the most serious offence, not because it is prosecuted in the higher court. It is because it is the most degrading crime that a woman can experience. Other improvements are around the parole process, including requiring the parole board to take into account whether a prisoner has information about the disposal of a victim's remains but has not disclosed it. Trauma-informed approaches embedded with a duty, a statutory duty on criminal justice bodies, protecting the privacy of victims through lifelong anonymity for sexual offence victims, new independent legal representation for victims where the court has been asked to look into a victim's character and sexual history, and strengthening protections for victims through reforms to non-harassment orders and other protective orders. Presiding Officer, that is the transformation that parliamentarians have the power to agree today by supporting the bill. And yes, indeed, it is a big bill, but as someone once said to me, you do as much as you can for as long as you can. And I know we are all attached to our tradition and our history, not least in our very unique legal system in Scotland, which of course we're all proud of and will do everything we can to safeguard. But as Lady Elise Angelini says, our justice system doesn't stand still due to tradition. The great thing about Scottish justice is that it does look at itself, and it does move, and it does develop. Presiding Officer, our justice system needs reform so that those who become part of it, whether as victims or witnesses of crime, feel safe and informed and are treated with understanding. This bill is needed to ensure that the structural, procedural and cultural change that will put victims and witnesses at the heart of a much more modern and fair justice system is created. And, Presiding Officer, let me conclude by urging, even at this late stage, to urge appeal to all parliamentarians not to let victims, their family and their support organisations down today. They want to know that we have heard them and that we are giving them our full support to this bill. We need to let those who we seek to serve know that their pain has not been in vain and that we are with them in their creation of a legacy that comes from their loss. Presiding Officer, I do appeal that we come together and back this bill.
Thank you.